Racist hotel manager fires black woman for helping guests, but her son shows up as the judge. The lobby of the Granville Regency Hotel gleamed with cold marble and quiet hostility. Charlene stood behind the concierge desk, her navy blue blazer crisp, her afro neatly pinned into a bun, and her smile polite but weary. She'd worked here for 8 years. Never late, never loud, never less than perfect. Today, perfection wouldn't save her. It began at 6:02 p.m. A young black couple walked in, exhausted, hand in hand, dragging luggage with one arm and holding each other with the other. Rain soaked their coats. The woman looked visibly pregnant. Charlene's fingers instinctively reached for the check-in screen. But before she could say a word, Bradley, her manager, strode forward, intercepting the couple like a linebacker. "Sorry, we're all booked," he said, flashing a smile that never touched his eyes. The man looked confused. "But we reserved online. Got a confirmation and everything." Bradley's tone turned frosty. "Must be a glitch in the system. Nothing I can do." Charlene felt it in her chest, the old ache, the one that bloomed when she watched her mother get called girl at the supermarket. The ache that came when her son came home asking why a teacher grabbed his wrist harder than the white boys. It was happening again. And she was expected to stand still, smile, be silent. But something broke this time. Charlene stepped forward. "Actually," she said, voice steady, "room 414 is still available, and the suite on 7 is clean and ready." Bradley's eyes snapped toward her like daggers. "Charlene," she turned to the couple, "please, let me help you with your bags." "Charlene," his voice cracked like a whip now, "in my office, now." The couple hesitated. Charlene looked them in the eye and said with quiet force, "You have a reservation, and you will be treated with dignity in this hotel, or I'll walk with you to a better one myself." The woman teared up. The man nodded silently. Charlene followed Bradley into the back office, knowing she had just walked into fire. He didn't wait. "What the hell was that?" "I told the truth." "You embarrassed me." "No, Bradley. You embarrassed yourself." His face darkened. "You're fired," effective immediately. Before we dive deeper into this shocking story, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you're into gripping stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. "I figured." Bradley gritted his teeth. "Security will escort you out." "You don't have to." But he'd already picked up the phone. 2 guards appeared in minutes. One wouldn't meet her eyes. The other smiled like this was entertainment. As Charlene walked back through the lobby, all eyes turned. Not a single coworker spoke. Her friend Yvonne, who shared lunch with her every Thursday for 6 years, looked down and pretended to type. Charlene kept her head high. The couple stood by the elevators, still waiting. When they saw her being walked out, the man clenched his fists. Charlene stopped beside them. She handed them a small card with a handwritten number. "The suite's yours. Don't let anyone tell you different." Security shoved open the glass doors. The cold slapped her face. As they forced her out onto the sidewalk, rain pouring down, thunder rumbling above, she glanced back at the hotel where she'd given nearly a decade of her life. No one followed. No one helped. But then, just as the doors closed behind her, she heard the woman whisper, voice trembling but fierce, "Thank you." Charlene stood in the rain, alone, but not ashamed. What she didn't know was that someone else had seen the whole thing, and they weren't going to stay silent. The rain hadn't let up. Charlene sat curled on the corner of her couch, wrapped in her late mother's old quilt, staring blankly at a cracked mug of chamomile tea. She hadn't touched it. The walls of her small apartment felt tighter than usual, as if grief had weight and it was pushing in on her from every side. She hadn't told her son yet. The silence in the room was broken only by the slow tick of the kitchen clock and the occasional rumble of traffic from the street below. Her phone buzzed once, then again. Messages from old coworkers. "Hey, I didn't know what to say. I'm so sorry." "They're saying you cursed out a guest? That true?" Charlene didn't reply. She couldn't. The hotel's PR machine was already spinning. The news was already spreading through town like smoke in a dry field. Employee dismissed after aggressive confrontation with guests. Hostile behavior disrupts peaceful hotel lobby. Lies. But that's how it always went, didn't it? They erase your dignity with headlines, make your truth sound dangerous, and suddenly they become the victims. It was happening again. Later that evening, she finally called her son. "Ma?" His voice came through the phone, deep, warm, steady. "Everything okay?" Charlene inhaled shakily. She hadn't told him about the firing yet, didn't want to distract him while he was clerking for a judge out in D.C. "No, baby, not really." "What happened?" She paused, then spoke quietly. "I stood up for someone, and they let me go." There was silence on the line. "Then, you okay?" "No, but I will be." Her voice cracked slightly, but she held the tears in until she hung up. The next morning, she woke to a knock at her door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her robe hung loosely on her shoulders as she shuffled barefoot across the floor and opened it. Nothing. Just a plain white envelope slipped underneath the door. No name, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Typed words in bold black ink. "You were right. They've done this before. I have proof. Stay strong. Justice is coming." Charlene's hands trembled. She read it again and again. Attached was a flash drive. She turned it over, stunned. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a new notification. Unknown number. "Don't delete the footage. They're already trying to bury it." Her heart pounded. Footage? She plugged the flash drive into her laptop with cautious hands. A video loaded. Grainy, but clear. It was security camera footage from the lobby the night she was fired. Only this angle hadn't been seen before. It showed Bradley, moments before the couple arrived, turning to the front desk clerk and whispering something. The audio was low, but someone had enhanced it. "Bradley, we don't check in people like them after dark. Bad for business." Her breath caught. It was a policy, an unwritten, racist policy. The couple never stood a chance, and she had simply broken a code of silence. Now someone else had broken it, too. Charlene leaned back, the edges of her mind buzzing. Someone from inside the hotel had risked everything to get this to her. Someone saw her. But who? And why now? She scrolled down the video feed. There were dozens of files. Other nights, other guests turned away, other silent moments of injustice. This was bigger than her. That night, she told her son everything. He said, his voice tight, "You need legal counsel." "I can't afford a lawyer," she whispered. "Leave that to me," he replied, and then added, almost in a murmur, "I've already spoken to someone." She paused. "What do you mean?" "I can't say more yet. Just trust me." He hung up before she could press further. The next morning, her phone rang again. This time, it was a law firm, not a firm she'd contacted. One she'd never even heard of. "Miss Charlene Hughes?" A calm voice asked. "Yes." "We've been retained to represent you. Someone filed a formal complaint on your behalf with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. There's also been a request for an emergency hearing regarding workplace discrimination and wrongful termination." Charlene's knees buckled. "But I didn't file anything. We're aware the complainant requested anonymity for now." "Why would someone do this?" The voice on the other end was gentle but firm. "Because someone believes in justice and they believe in you." Charlene clutched the phone, stunned. Then the lawyer added, "We'll see you in court next week. Pack your dignity. You're going to need it." That night, she sat alone in her apartment again. Only this time, she wasn't afraid. She opened the flash drive once more, watched the footage again. This time, she didn't cry. She smiled. Because she realized something that Bradley and his kind would never understand. They hadn't fired a woman. They'd freed her. And whatever was coming next, she was ready. What she didn't know was that the courtroom she'd be walking into wouldn't just change her life. It would expose a secret even she wasn't prepared for. Charlene prepares to attend the unexpected court hearing, unaware that a powerful force has been working behind the scenes, not just on her behalf, but as part of something much larger. She's about to walk into a storm and meet the last person she expected. The courthouse didn't look like much from the outside, just brick and concrete and glass. But to Charlene, it felt like standing at the gates of something holy. She adjusted her blazer, the same navy one she wore at the hotel, the one she thought she'd never wear again. The air was cool that morning, crisp, clean, like something was finally being cleared. Behind her, cars zipped past, indifferent to the moment that felt monumental in her bones. She stepped forward. 3 days earlier, she'd watched her bank account drop below double digits. Unemployment hadn't processed yet, bills were stacking up, rent was due, but she wasn't broken. If anything, she was sharpening. That anonymous lawyer, had spent hours reviewing the footage, organizing evidence, and preparing her for what was next. "You're not just walking in as an employee," Sophia said. "You're walking in as a witness to a pattern." Charlene nodded, but one question haunted her every night since. Who filed the complaint? Sophia never answered, but one evening she hinted, almost cryptically, let's just say, someone very close to justice. The court hearing wasn't public yet, just an initial proceeding. A judge would review the evidence, determine if a formal trial was warranted, and decide whether Charlene's termination violated federal employment law. But there was something unusual. No judge name was listed on the docket. Only the courtroom number, 32. The halls of the courthouse echoed with footsteps as she walked, clutching a folder full of truth in trembling fingers. She passed a row of people on the bench, some asleep, some with children, some clinging to hope. It reminded her of how many other stories there were, how many women like her had been silenced and swept under the rug. She stepped into courtroom 312 and froze. There were hotel executives seated near the front, Bradley among them, smug and smirking, flanked by their high-priced legal team in tailored suits. But it wasn't them that stopped her in her tracks. It was the man sitting behind the elevated bench, her son, dressed in black robes, expression unreadable. She gasped, barely able to breathe. Her knees buckled. "Jamal?" she whispered under her breath. He didn't flinch, didn't even glance at her. His voice rang out, calm and controlled. "This court is now in session. I am Judge Jamal Hughes, presiding." The room fell into stunned silence. Even Bradley turned, confused, then pale. Sophia stepped up beside Charlene and whispered, "We couldn't tell you. Conflict of interest rules. He was assigned last minute, but he refused to recuse himself." Charlene whispered, voice cracking, "Why?" "Because he said you never backed down for him. He wasn't going to back down for you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back. Jamal's eyes met hers, just for a second, and in that second, the strength of generations passed between them. The hearing began. The hotel's lawyers argued it was a personnel matter, that the employee violated protocol by speaking out of turn, that there was no documented racism. Then Jamal spoke. "May I direct the court's attention to Exhibit 14? A screen lit up. It was the lobby footage, the audio-enhanced clip. Bradley's voice echoed in the courtroom. "We don't check in people like them after dark. Bad for business." A gasp rippled through the room. Charlene felt it in her chest, the air finally shifting. Then another clip played. Yvonne from housekeeping speaking secretly to another employee. "Bradley's been doing this for years, but folks just stay quiet. They got bills." Then yet another. A guest, white, being upgraded to a suite that very same night the black couple had been turned away. The lies were unraveling. The room turned ice cold. Bradley began to sweat, visibly. Charlene watched her son work, calm, composed, brilliant. Each word he spoke dismantled the hotel's defense, and still no one in the room knew, not the executives, not the lawyers, that the woman sitting across from them was his mother. Finally, Judge Hughes said, "This hearing will recess until evidence review is complete. However, I will note for the record, the burden of proof is shifting rapidly." Everyone stood to leave. Charlene was still frozen in her seat, her hands shaking. She finally rose, and as the courtroom emptied, Jamal descended from the bench, slowly, carefully. He looked around to make sure they were alone. Then he stepped up to her, removed his glasses, and hugged her tight. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you," he whispered. "I wanted you to see what I became on your own terms." Charlene wept in his arms. "Baby, you didn't become. You always were." He held her tighter. Then he pulled back, eyes fierce now. "They're hiding more. We found references to a secret company email chain. Code words. Denial quotas. There's a system here, Ma." Charlene's voice was barely audible. "How deep does it go?" Jamal looked down, then back up at her, deep enough that some people are already trying to make it go away. Charlene blinked. "What do you mean?" He took out his phone and showed her something, an internal email leaked just hours ago. Subject, urgent, damage control. From hotel legal team to Bradley, execs. "We need to contain this judge. He has a conflict of interest. If anyone finds out who the plaintiff is to him, we're finished." Charlene's jaw dropped. "They know," Jamal whispered, "and they're coming for us." What Charlene didn't know was that tomorrow's hearing wouldn't be about her job. It would be about whether her son would be removed from the case and silenced. As the hotel's legal team demands Judge Hughes recuse himself, Charlene faces the possibility of losing both her case and her son's career until a shocking new witness takes the stand and reads devastating internal emails aloud, sending the courtroom into chaos. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Whispers stirred like dry leaves in the gallery seats. Reporters packed the back row now. Local news vans were parked outside. Word had gotten out not just about the case, but about who was on the bench. Judge Jamal Hughes. And the woman bringing the claim? His mother. Bradley sat stiffly beside the hotel's corporate counsel, his jaw tight, face pale. Sweat glistened at his temple despite the cool courtroom air. Charlene sat just behind her attorney, Sophia, her hands folded but trembling ever so slightly in her lap, her dignity intact, her fire smoldering. The court clerk stood and cleared her throat. Motion filed by the defense, request for Judge Hughes to recuse himself due to familial relationship with the plaintiff. A murmur rippled through the room like a wave slapping stone. Jamal didn't blink. He took a breath, eyes scanning the room. "I received the motion," he said calmly, "and after consulting with the ethics board and full disclosure of the facts, I decline to recuse." Gasps. Audible. He continued, "My involvement is a matter of public record now, but my impartiality will not be compromised. The court, however, has appointed a co-judge to oversee final ruling if necessary. I will remain to hear evidence." Bradley shot a panicked glance to his lawyer. Charlene narrowed her eyes. They thought they could bury him, strip his robe. They didn't realize he stitched it himself. Sophia rose next. "Your Honor, we call our first witness for this session, Yvonne Ellis." Charlene's breath caught. Yvonne? Her old coworker, her silent lunch partner, stepped forward slowly. She looked terrified, but her eyes found Charlene's, and something in her gaze changed. She took the oath, hands shaking slightly. Sophia handed her a tablet. "Miss Ellis, do you recognize these?" Yvonne looked down. Dozens of internal emails, threads of discussions, schedules, special handling notes. One thread was labeled Guest Sorting Policy, Urban Risk Management. The courtroom stiffened. Sophia asked, "Can you read the first message aloud?" Yvonne nodded, voice quiet but clear. "Effective immediately, staff is reminded to reassign or decline walk-ins from guests who may negatively impact the brand experience, especially at night. Code 414 applies." Charlene froze. That was the sweet she tried to give the black couple. Sophia turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we have reason to believe this policy was applied almost exclusively to guests of color, often without documentation. We have names. We have records." Bradley fidgeted, then stood suddenly. "Objection! This is hearsay!" Jamal looked up, his voice cold steel. "It's not hearsay if the emails come from your own inbox, Mr. Bradley." A ripple of laughter from the gallery. Jamal turned back to Yvonne. "Why did you come forward now?" She swallowed hard. "Because I watched her, Charlene, stand alone while the rest of us kept our heads down. I thought silence kept me safe, but it kept me small." She looked directly at Charlene. "I'm not small anymore." Tears slipped down Charlene's cheek. But Yvonne wasn't done. "I also found something else, buried, archived." She tapped through the tablet. A hush fell over the room. "This," she said, "was a private email chain between Bradley and the regional director. They knew she'd speak out eventually. They planned her removal months in advance." She tapped again. The screen lit up behind the witness stand. A single email, dated 6 weeks before Charlene's termination. From Bradley to regional director. Subject, insurance against the desk clerk. "She's getting too bold, always asking questions. Keep eyes on her. When the moment comes, we'll create the narrative. She won't have a leg to stand on." Bradley's mouth fell open. Silence, then chaos. Reporters typing furiously. One of the hotel's lawyers grabbed their briefcase and stormed out. Sophia leaned over and whispered to Charlene, "They just lost and they know it." But Jamal raised his hand. "Order, order." Silence returned like a switch was flipped. Jamal stood. "This court will reconvene for a final ruling in 24 hours. I will not allow any attempts to intimidate witnesses or tamper with evidence in the meantime. This is no longer just about wrongful termination." He looked directly at Bradley. "This is about a pattern of systemic exclusion and intent to discriminate." Bradley stood red-faced. "You're biased. This is personal. You shouldn't be allowed to rule on anything." Jamal didn't blink. "You're right," he said. "It is personal. for every guest who was turned away, for every worker who was silenced. But this bench still stands, and so do I. He slammed the gavel down, court adjourned. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had grown, cameras flashed, microphones waved, but Charlene didn't speak. She walked straight through it all, head high, her son beside her. They didn't say much on the way home, just held hands in the back seat of the car. Two warriors, battle-tested, 2 generations finally fighting the same war side by side. But as they reached her apartment, a black car waited at the curb. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out. "Miss Hughes?" he asked politely. Charlene hesitated. "Yes?" He handed her a card. "Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. We've been watching the case. We'd like to speak with you, privately." Charlene and Jamal exchanged a stunned look. "Why?" she asked. The man's voice was low, serious, because the Granville Regency is just one of 12 hotels using this policy across the country. He leaned in closer. "And you may have just started something much bigger than you realize." What Charlene didn't know was that tomorrow's verdict wouldn't just change her life. It would set off a wave across the entire industry. Rain tapped against the courthouse windows like 1,000 quiet hands applauding justice before it was even delivered. The courtroom was packed wall to wall. Cameras, reporters, victims, former employees, lawyers from every corner of the country. Even members of Congress had quietly taken seats in the back row. The eyes of the nation were now on this small courtroom, once just a place of procedure, now a battleground for truth. Charlene sat quietly at the plaintiff's table. She wore the same navy blazer, not because it was all she had, but because it had become a symbol, her armor. Across from her, Bradley sat motionless. Gone was the smugness. His tailored suit hung on him like guilt. Beside him, a rotating team of lawyers shuffled papers, but none dared look up. Judge Jamal Hughes, robed and posed, stepped up to the bench. His face was unreadable. But his eyes, those eyes, were fire. He cleared his throat. "This court has reviewed over 300 pages of documentation, dozens of hours of surveillance footage, and sworn testimonies from employees, guests, and independent analysts." A pause. "Additionally, the Department of Justice has launched an ongoing civil rights investigation into 12 affiliated properties across the country, based on patterns first uncovered in this case." The room held its breath. Jamal continued. "The termination of Miss Charlene Hughes was not only retaliatory, it was premeditated." Charlene inhaled sharply. He kept going. "Furthermore, this court finds evidence of systemic racial discrimination in the operation of the Granville Regency Hotel, its regional leadership, and affiliated training protocols." A collective gasp. Bradley finally bowed his head. Charlene's eyes welled with tears, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Jamal turned to face her directly. "Miss Hughes, for your courage, your honesty, and your refusal to be silent in the face of injustice, this court awards you full back pay, additional damages for emotional distress, and mandates a formal public apology from the hotel chain's CEO." Applause erupted in the gallery. Jamal raised a hand, then looked out over the crowd. "But this ruling does not end here, because justice, true justice, is never about one woman's case. It's about all of us, the invisible, the disrespected, the underpaid, the silenced." His voice grew louder. "This is not the story of a hotel clerk. It is the story of America's conscience." Silence followed, thick, electric. After the hearing, Charlene stood in the hallway, still processing. Reporters swarmed her, microphones pressed close, but before she could speak, the DOJ agent from before stepped up again. "This is just the beginning," he told her. "We'll need your voice on panels at conferences. We want you to consult with our department." Charlene blinked. "Me?" He smiled. "You changed the law today. Don't stop now." As he walked away, Sophia leaned over and whispered, "You didn't just win a case, you started a movement." That evening, a press conference was held on the courthouse steps. Jamal took the podium, media lights washing over his face. He scanned the crowd and found Charlene, standing in the front row. He took a breath. "When I was growing up, I watched my mother face 1,000 closed doors. Some slammed in her face, others so subtle you'd almost think she imagined them." He paused. "But she never imagined them. She endured them, quietly, powerfully. And every time she showed up with her head held high, she was teaching me something." His voice cracked, but he kept going. "Today, I wore this robe for her, and for every woman who ever got escorted out of a building, not because she did something wrong, but because she refused to let something wrong keep happening." The crowd erupted into cheers. Jamal stepped away from the mic and walked down the steps. Charlene met him at the bottom. They didn't say a word. They just embraced. Two fighters, one battle, one victory. They tried to silence her, mock her, fire her, erase her, but they didn't know. She had raised the man who would speak for her. And now, the world was listening. This isn't just Charlene's story. It's ours. It's yours. It's everyone who's ever been told to sit down, stay quiet, or stop making waves. But she didn't stop. And because she didn't, a whole generation stood up. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Untold Touching Stories for more powerful, true-to-life stories of perseverance, justice, and Black excellence.